Here we go. Headphones, no headphones. Hi everybody, welcome back. Setup is a little cramped. Welcome back to Harmonies and Hindsights, where we talk about music in hindsight. Last week we had Leanne Tarab on the podcast. She's a childhood friend of mine. She goes by Leanne as an artist and an actress and a scholar and fluent in Spanish. Leanne is a multifaceted individual, and it was so great to talk to her. And I'm sure I'll have her back for a second episode because I kind of felt like 30 minutes wasn't enough time to get to know her. This week we're flying solo, which is super exciting. I thought I would do something that I've been wanting to do, potentially on my YouTube channel, but one of my favorite videos on the internet, maybe for you too, is watching people rank things on tier lists on that website. You know, people rank favorite snacks, people rank TV shows, and today we're gonna rank every album I've ever listened to. I'm 22, almost 23. I make music. I love music. So I listen to a lot of music. So this is obviously not every album I've ever listened to. There's some honorable mentions in here that I haven't listened to in years. Pretty much the criteria for this is I would have had to have listened to it front to back, every song all the way through, perhaps even multiple times for this to count. I've made a little list just to keep myself on track. All right, let's pull up the tier list. This was super fun to make and just go down memory lane. These are the rankings from top to bottom. We have my entire personality. I'm thinking the criteria with this is it's part of my identity. It's probably why I am who I am. And if it comes up in conversation, I will talk about this piece of work. Or if I'm interviewed about it, I'll talk about it. Extremely important. There's only a select few that can go in that category. Then next we have extremely important to me. This means this tugged on my heartstring at some point. It meant something to me at some point. And I don't think I could be who I am without it, but it's not one that I truly, truly identify with for like long-term periods of time. Then we have I really loved it. This is just, it was a good album. I would probably listen to it again. I'd put it on a playlist. I would drive to it. I would road trip with it. But it's not something that I feel like I couldn't survive without, if that makes sense. Then we have, I guess kind of on that same vein, sometimes I forget about it. If it's brought up, I'd be like, oh, that was a great album. But I wouldn't I got to listen to this on my drive today. So sometimes I forget about it, but it's a good album. And then we have Lost in the Ether. And that means I listened to it. I probably liked it. And then I just kind of lost it. And then when it comes up again, I'm not mad about it. Obviously, for the sake of this video, all of these albums are albums that I did like, of course, in some capacity. Again, they're not every album that I've ever listened to. And it's just my opinion. And some of these might be your favorite albums. And some of these might be albums that you don't like at all. And that's the beauty of making music. It's not for everybody, but it's for somebody. And these were for me. Let's get started. These are in no particular order. The first album we have up is Gregory Alan Isakov's This Empty Northern Hemisphere, starting with a banger. I know that Brandi Carlile does harmonies throughout this album. So of course you marry two of my favorite people together, and a lot of these tend to be in the folk, country, pop world. So that's just a forewarning for you. This album, I heard it for the first time in 2016. And it completely changed my life. And I think it's part of the reason why I still make music. There's a couple artists on one hand that do that for me, but this album did that for me. And throughout high school, I used to study at Barnes & Noble to this album. I owe this album a lot in terms of inspiration. So we're going to put Gregory Alan Isakov's This Empty Northern Hemisphere in my entire personality. Next, we kind of have one that's left field that I forgot is the La La Land soundtrack. I loved this movie. Of course, maybe my entire personality is that I grew up in Los Angeles, but I'm grateful for that. So this movie gave me something. I was in high school when it came out, so maybe a ton of it I didn't totally relate to at the time. But now that I'm in my 20s, I kind of fully understand this movie more than I did before. Honorable mention on this album is A Lovely Night. On top of Herman's Habit, I loved this album. I wouldn't say I totally identify with it, but I really liked it. And I'm stuck between I really loved it and extremely important to me. And sometimes I forget about it, but I do listen to this. When it comes up on my playlist, I do stop for it. So I'm going to go and say that La La Land, I really loved it. Okay, we're entering indie. I discovered this album at the beginning of college in 2019, before COVID. This guy is so awesome. He puts videos on YouTube about his production process. And even though I'm not super avid into the production part of music, more like the writing, this is one of those albums that totally just embodies a part of your life. And I think about this album when I think about starting college. Honorable mention, best song on the album is Dear Friend. I think it's so well written. It's a sad song, but it's like disguised under really good production that doesn't seem too sad. This album is phenomenal. I love that it's really just him, I think, in his house or apartment in Austin, Texas somewhere, doing his thing. And so I absolutely love this album. I would say this one's extremely important to me. A lot of things happened in my life during this album. And now we're heading into like indie rock, just good vibes. We have Hippocampus's Landmark album. This is a shout out to my friend Ava and Leanne. I think of both of them when I listen to this album. This album makes me feel cool. I remember I listened to this and maybe it wasn't super big at the time. And I thought, wow, like I found something really small and cool. Honorable mention, best song on this album is Tuesday. Making conversations with a glass of wine. On Tuesday. Kind of on the same vein as Dayglow. Just means a lot to me personally. I think of this album when I think of Friend. The cover is super cool. And I remember when I was in like a painting phase, I got like a square canvas and I painted this album to hang in my apartment. I don't know where it is. And that's got me thinking that I should probably go look for it because it was really cool. I feel like I've gotten the chance to see Hippocampus live too so many times and it just never works out. But one of those days it's coming and I'll be there. And yeah, Landmark, I would say it's a step above that. I really loved it. It's extremely important to me. This is a no skip. When I'm in the car, I at least play a song that comes on it. So that's a no skip. Lord Huron, Lonesome Dreams. And I think the best song on it is between Lullaby and She Lit a Fire. Lit a fire and now she's in my every thought. You want... Anyway, again, can we talk about the album cover? Again, I'm a sucker for like nature, folk, the album is called Lonesome Dreams, and this album cover absolutely embodies that title, I think. Lullaby was featured in one of my favorite romance movies, Endless Love, the 2014 remake, not the one from the 80s, I think. I remember I saw that when I was like 14, and I was like, that's what love is. There's a dog barking outside. I'm so sorry. Strange Trails recently has gone above this one. Besides those two songs, I don't often refer back to this album. Strange Trails I listen to all the time, which I don't know if I put on this tier list for some reason. I would say Lonesome Dreams, sometimes I forget about it, but it's an amazing album, and I think I will always want to listen to it. Next up, we have a really recent one that I found. Now we're heading kind of more country rock, folk-ish. And that's Isaac Opatz's Mariachi Static. I put both of his albums on here, minus he did like a country covers album, which is super cool. Today we're going to focus on more original stuff. A couple months ago, I was kind of, I suppose, a lower point of life, and I wasn't feeling very inspired with music, and I felt like I was writing a lot of the same things over and over and over again. And I remember just, wishing I could find more music, and I feel like besides Brandy Carlisle, I've been looking for something in my life that I love all the artists that I identify with, but I feel like I'm missing something. I feel like there's something I haven't heard yet, and little did I know it was this. This album is phenomenal. Honorable mention, best song is Limited Liability. She drove 14 interstate hours to meet me without going know why. She wants to know that this is all off the record, because she hasn't quite made up her mind. Okay. This is the kind of music that if you love the folk genre, maybe leaning kind of country, you've been searching for this your entire life, and I highly recommend just checking him out. Absolutely. Mariachi Static is extremely important to me. Ooh, we're going real folk. This is Camp's By and By album. I love this. I love this album. They came up on a playlist because I love the Lumineers, and that kind of, came together. Honorable mention, best song on this album is probably Wonderbar or By and By title track. This just makes you want to go on a road trip and just not tell anybody where you're going and just be gone for a few days and don't bring your phone and then come back. I really loved it. I listened to it. I come back to it. I really loved it. This is a really random one that I'm not sure how I found, but it's Juke Ross's Chapter 2 album. Honorable mention, best song on the album I think is amazing. I think you're amazing. This was a really hard one for me because when I was kind of going through all of the albums that I've listened to, this one just slipped me by and I forgot that I even had this album, but it's so wonderful. But for the sake of this video, I am going to have to put it in Lost in the Ether not because the songwriting and production is not astounding, just from my personal playlist, I forgot about it. I can't believe I forgot about it, but it was Lost in the Ether, but you should definitely check it out. It's a great album. Next, I'm going to do two together that I feel like I pair in my head just because I know they write together. I'm going to do Christian Lee Hudson's Beginners album and then Phoebe Bridgers' Punisher album, of course. Putting these two people together as writers is probably insanity in itself, but these albums on their own are astounding, and one of my favorite album covers is Beginners by Christian Lee Hudson. I think it's so cool. I love this album. I think the songwriting is phenomenal. I think Northsiders is my favorite song off of the album as an honorable mention. And sometimes I forget about it, but I love it and I think it's amazing. And then of course, Phoebe Bridgers' Punisher. Best song I think is Garden Song, because there's that verse that's like, they're growing roses on a flatbed. You should see them. I mean, thousands. I would put Punisher under extremely important to me. I listen to it a lot. It's actually the album that I listen to on plane rides because you can knock out and be completely immersed in just great, soft music. Next one's another recent one that I didn't think I'd love so much. It's Lainey Wilson's Bell Bottom Country album. She's doing wonderful things this year. I know she's winning a lot of stuff in the, nominations world, but of course, I liked Watermelon Moonshine, but then now that I listen to this album, I think the best song on it is probably Weekend. I like the play on words with that song. Morning didn't dawn on me that I'm hungover from the weekend. Yeah, the weekend of a heartache. A permanent case of the Mondays. Maybe I'll get over you one day. Super cool. I love play on words in songs. I think it makes them really interesting. I'm really stuck between Extremely Important to Me and I Really Loved It. Because right now it's extremely important to me, but I really loved it as well. And I think long term, I'm going to put it under I Really Loved It. But I'm sure whatever her next project is going to be equally as phenomenal. Next album, we're going to do a little speed round. And some of these are albums from the past and some are current. So I'm going to do a 5-album speed round. Adam Melcher's Summer Camp EP. I really loved it. Brandi Carlile, The Firewatcher's Daughter. My Entire Personality. My favorite album by her, my favorite artist. Nothing to be said. Bloodline, my album. I thought for fun, I would put my own album because I have listened to this back to front to back and front and front and back again. And sometimes you get sick of your own music, but Bloodline, I really loved it. Niglow's third album, People in Motion, loved it, but was sort of lost in the ether. Sammy Copley's Growing Pains album, heartbreaking. Absolutely so well written. Honorable mention, best track is Turtles All the Way Down. And this is going under extremely important to me. A lot of the songwriting that I do nowadays surrounds this album and the inspiration from it. And the dog is still barking, and I'm so sorry about that. But yeah. Next speed round, we've got 2 Haim albums on here. So I'm going to go the one that I really loved, which is These Are Gone. Besides The Wire, sometimes I forget about it. But extremely important to me is Women in Music, Part 3. Loved that album. Now I'm in it, the track off of that album, because now I'm in it. Should my reflection would tell me something. I can't get a hold of myself. Can't get out of the situation. Next honorable mention, really respect everything that Harry Styles does. I don't listen on a daily basis, but I did listen to his second album. Fine Line, loved it. I really loved it. Circle back to Isaac Opat's Extra Medium. Best song on that album is probably Handholder, but in terms of lyrics, probably Shampoo, because I feel like it's kind of a song about leaving things too soon, and it somehow is metaphorically tied to maybe him being on the road and never being able to finish a bottle of shampoo. Album is My Entire Personality. One that kind of snuck up on me, like Lainey Wilson's album, is Kelsey Ballerini, Object to Change album. I love the cover. I think she looks phenomenal. I think it's such a fun album. I love it. This is one of my driving ones when I'm like in a bad mood and I want to be in a good mood. So thanks, Kelsey. I'd say this album's extremely important to me. Yeah. Let's go back in time a little bit. We're going to throw back to Ed Sheeran. I was and still am a big Ed Sheeran fan. I put 3 of his albums on here to rank because I have them very specifically ranked in my head. I think along with a lot of other people my age, probably Plus was the reason you started writing music. Love that album. So I'm going to say I really loved it. For Divide, it's got a lot of hits on that album, but in general, it's lost in the ether compared to some of the stuff that he's put out, but that's also a really wonderful album. And Multiply just grooves. I sometimes forget about it, but it grooves. On a soundtrack. I loved this movie. I still love this movie. The soundtrack makes me smile, but sometimes I forget about it. Maybe if I'm comparing it to another film thing like La La Land, I know they're nowhere in the same vein at all, but I feel like I reference La La Land a lot. Moana, sometimes I forget about it, but when it comes up, I'm like, yeah, what can I say except you're welcome? So we've got 3 in my entire personality. Let's add a 4th one. That's a huge tie between Lumineere's Cleopatra and Lumineere's self-titled album. I refuse to put both because I feel like Cleopatra is a phenomenal album and it has no skips, and I can't believe that album. And the Lumineeres, again, are a huge part of why I make music. So Cleopatra is my entire personality, but the Lumineeres self-titled is extremely important to me. Here's kind of one that I never listened to anymore, but at the time when I was in high school and I wanted to be like with it. And I remember I got my license when I turned 16 and I was like, and I like rolled my windows down playing this album because I was like, I'm older than I think I am. And that's American Tea. Sometimes I forget about it, but that album gives me happy vibes from the early teen years. So we've got Gregory in entire personality, but we also have his Weatherman album, which is a hard draw for me because it's my favorite album cover of all time. But I think the track list of Empty Northern Hemisphere is better. So I want to put the Weatherman is extremely important to me because it is. And yeah. Next we have the Hannah Montana movie soundtrack. Absolutely my entire personality. I can't tell you the hits on this album, and I love that movie. That movie just makes you feel safe. Another one, like at the same time, is Train's Save Me San Francisco album. Oh my God. Hey Soul Sister. I love that album. I wouldn't say it's like I don't reach for it. So sometimes I forget about it, but in middle school, my entire personality. Another one that completely shocked me is Mumford & Sons' Delta album. Super cool. Loved it. Best song, honorable mention, is Woman. And I really loved it. I did. Next, we have some Phineas stuff. We've got Blood Harmony as well as Optimist. This one is easily stacked in my head. They're both really wonderful. I think Blood Harmony I really loved it. And Optimist, sometimes I forget about it, but when I listen to Love is Pain, I remember it again. Vance Joy. I went through a huge Vance Joy phase. Obviously, Riptide was huge. Fire and the Flood, huge. His album, of the Dream Your Life Away album, but sometimes it's lost in the ether. Another one that's also lost in the ether, but gone but not forgotten, is It Won't Be Soon Before Long by Maroon 5. These were the days when like I had an iPod and like I didn't load my own music on my iPod, and I would just like take stuff that my mom had. I asked her to stay, but she wouldn't listen. That's a good one. Let's plow through the rest of them and call it a day. Was not a huge Directioner. I was way more into 5 Seconds of Summer, but I do like the Made in the AM album. It's a little bit lost in the ether, but I think there's some hits on there. Bruno Mars, Doo-Wops and Hooligans. Wonderful. Sometimes I forget about it, but you can still groove every time it comes on. And got another shocking one. Sabrina Carpenter, Emails I Can't Send. I've been listening to her. Again, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry to be that person. But I've listened to her since her Disney Channel days, and I've always thought her music was great. So this album, I really loved it. I did. I really loved it. Ben Howard, Every Kingdom. This song is the reason I decided to like actually learn guitar. So this one's extremely important to me. I did 2 more. Noah Kahan has quite a few wonderful albums that have been out, but for the sake of this video, I'll do his most recent, Stick Season. So wonderful. Yeah, I really loved it. I do reference this album a lot. I do really like it. And lastly, let's go more produced. Let's go a little more produced. Bleachers, Strange Desire, Jack Antonoff, phenomenal producer. And I would put this under extremely important to me. This song kind of taught me that production is an art and there's so much to it. And I started respecting the art of production when I first heard this album in like the late 2016s on. Loved it. So yeah, that was me ranking some albums. I really hope that you enjoyed this episode. Next week or a couple weeks after this, I'm sure we're going to get a couple more really good interviews in and bring some more friends and just broaden it with people that we interview. Yeah, I'm sure we'll be back in Carson and Tiona's space down in K-Town soon to record some more stuff. But until then, hello from my childhood bedroom. I'm sure we'll be back. This was Harmonies and Hindsight, and I'll see you next time. Sit.